Part 78. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 771. Chapter 771 Fierce Battle 1. This arrangement, space, and time took a full 1,000 years to complete these things. Then she went to see Mujukin again. When they arrived at Dihun Mountain, Mujukin was chatting and laughing with Ming Qi. Ming Qi was recovering from his injuries on Seoul Mountain. He had not been able to leave the border for tens of thousands of years. He didn't expect to see him today. Looking at his energetic appearance, the injury has healed. Is your great-grandfather's injury healed now? Yuan went over and sat directly next to Mujukin and asked him, but looked at Mujukin. Ming Qi didn't mind. He nodded with a smile. Great-grandfather is already well. Thanks to your magical space, great-grandfather's soul has been healed after being injured for so many years. Great-grandfather, thank you very much. Yuan pursed her lips and looked a little sad. She said, my family won't say those kind words, as long as my great-grandfather is well. Minky stretched out his hand to rub her head. The sadness in Yuan's eyes made him feel distressed. This girl has always been open-minded, and Mujukin's incident had a big impact on her. He said, okay, then great-grandfather will not be polite to the girl from now on. The girl came just in time. Just now, great-grandfather was talking to Jukin about his affairs. Girl, tell me about the strength of the Suzaku ancestor. Yuan was filled with hatred when she mentioned the Suzaku ancestor, and felt a sense of powerlessness in her heart. She glanced at Mujukin, who nodded towards her. She then said, great-grandfather, the Suzaku patriarch is probably the strongest among all the practitioners I have ever seen. He is at least one level stronger than great-grandfather. Yuan judged this based on the last time Suzaku ancestor fought against her. His speed and aura were much stronger than Ming Qi. She is simply a scumbag in front of the Suzaku ancestor. If she hadn't used the soul-splitting method, her space would not have been saved. After hearing this, Ming Qi said thoughtfully, if you put it this way, great-grandfather would not dare to compete with him face to face. He has always been a rational person. He can help Mujukin within the scope of his strength, but he is not willing to risk his life. What's more, Mujukin didn't really die. If he did, that's another matter. He looked at Mujukin and said apologetically, Jukin, you don't blame my great-grandfather for not keeping his word, do you? Mujukin waved his hand and said, what happened? Just now, I was saying that I wanted you to see Wanner first. His current memory is very strange. It can only be restored to the moment when he was in the fairy world. The subsequent memories are like being cut off with a knife. The subsequent memories cannot be restored no matter what. When Yuan heard what the two said, she knew that Ming Qi was going to find the Suzaku ancestor. She quickly dismissed Ming Qi's idea, great-grandpa, you don't have to interfere with Mujukin's matter. Wei-er will handle it by herself. Suzaku ancestor, it's so powerful, Wei-er only managed to escape with a clone last time. Ming Qi nodded, great-grandpa understands, so you can't do anything wrong. Mujukin was startled when he heard this. Before Yuan could say anything, he said first, Wanner, let's forget about such a dangerous matter. Anyway, my soul has been cultivated enough. There is no need to take risks. If you go out, if anything happens, the consequences will be unimaginable. Yuan nodded and changed the subject, has your memory still not recovered? Of course she will go find the Suzaku ancestor, and she will go there later without letting Mujukin know. Mujukin shook his head, no, my memories are before the fairy world, and the memories after that are as if they have been specially sealed. No matter what, I can't recover any more. Oh. That is to say, it is impossible to know what happened at that time. She just wondered how Mujukin's memory could be lost. Could it be that Mujukin sealed his memory himself? Only in this way will his clone be unable to recover its memory. It is really possible that the main soul that Mujukan said did not die. Thinking of this, Yuan became more and more nervous. She chatted with the two for a while and then left with an excuse. Then she came out of the space and wandered around in the God realm again. I don't know what method Mujukan used to survive under the eyes of Boss Suzaku, but his situation must be very dangerous, and she had to find a way to rescue him. So Yuan traveled around the world of gods. Hundreds of years passed in the blink of an eye, and Yuan looked at the God realm. It had been more than 10,000 years since the last time the God realm came out. The God realm was as usual, with no changes at all. The world of gods is like this. It remains the same for thousands of years. Except for the various forces in the air becoming lighter, nothing else has changed. After cultivating to the level of a god, one's lifespan will be endless. On the contrary, one will be more like people in the mortal world, preferring a quiet life and enjoying life. Scenes of fighting and killing are rare. The divine world is not like the fairy world. The fairy world can also ascend to the divine world, so the immortals will work hard to practice. The world of gods has come to an end in the world of cultivation. People at this time don't worry about lifespan, and most of them practice slowly. Therefore, ordinary gods do not have the desire to fight and kill. Let alone fight to the death for a small amount of cultivation resources, or do something crazy, and thus pay for it with one's life. Only when interests and lives are affected, we will not be lenient at that time. Generally speaking, gods cherish life and stay away from danger, so the world of gods is very peaceful. Yuan wandered around the god realm aimlessly, inquiring about the divine tower to see if it had appeared again. Unfortunately, the god realm had been very peaceful for more than 10,000 years, and there had been no such thing since the last divine tower appearance. What Yuan didn't know was that a battle was taking place in the demon suppression tower of the Suzaku ancestor. After more than 10,000 years of training, Mujukan finally sucked the soul of the Suzaku ancestor to a great level, and the soul was a little weaker than his. He felt now was the best time to fight back. So Mujukan flew out of Suzaku ancestor's body while he was meditating. As soon as he flew out, 10 soul thorns flew towards the Suzaku ancestor. Ancestor Suzaku is concentrating on practicing, and he is practicing completely unprepared in his demon suppression tower. This sudden attack made him panic for a moment, and then he quickly dodged away. Mujukan's body was a little far away from the Suzaku ancestor, but he dodged it, and only one of the 10 soul thorns hit him. Ancestor Suzaku has never thought in his life that someone would dare to attack him in his territory. When Mujukan saw him hit one, he immediately shouted, "Explode!" Boom, there was a roar, but it did not kill the Suzaku ancestor. Instead, his soul suddenly transformed into his true body. The power of the soul thorn was not enough to kill him, but only injured him. When the Suzaku patriarch saw it was Mujukan, he looked at Mujukan in horror. Why didn't he die? End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 772. Chapter 772 Fierce Battle 2. This is incredible, where did it come from? Where is he hiding? The Suzaku ancestor was stunned for a moment, and instantly used Nanming Liwo to attack Mujukan. Mujukan sneered and used this move to attack him with Nanmingli fire, thinking that the fire could burn him to death. When the fierce flames were flying towards Mujukan, Mujukan waved his hand, and a large ball of flames rushed towards the Nanming Liwo. Let him see his own Nanming Liwo. This is all thanks to the Suzaku ancestor. Without his sponsorship of the Nanming Liwo, how could his Nanming Liwo be promoted to the top grade divine fire? Boom! The two flames collided together and exploded into a huge flame. The two flames immediately burned each other. The Suzaku patriarch and Mujukin retreated dozens of feet at the same time to avoid disaster. Watching the two flames burning each other, the Suzaku ancestor stared at the scene with his eyes wide open in disbelief. It was simply unbelievable. In the past, Mujukin's small flame was no more than the size of a fist, but now it has been upgraded to the ultimate divine fire. Thinking about how Mujukin's small flame was upgraded to the ultimate flame, the Suzaku ancestor was furious. He roared and flew towards Mujukin, wanting to kill him. "You junior, I killed you today, but you are my ancestor," Mujukin said scornfully, "just calling me is useless. Our men will see the truth. If you don't beat me today, I will be your ancestor. I won't call you Mujukin. He has endured humiliation for so long just to take revenge today." "Ah!" Zuck yelled angrily and rushed towards Mujukin like an arrow through the flames. A giant palm suddenly formed and pressed towards Mujukin like a mountain. "I wish I could crush him into meatloaf and then swallow him in one gulp." Mujukin secretly arrived just in time. His consciousness moved, and 10 soul thorns flew towards the Suzaku ancestor again. "Ah, it's this nasty soul thorn again." When the Suzaku ancestor saw the soul thorn coming, he was extremely disgusted. He immediately closed his palm and dodged the soul thorn with lightning speed. Then he swept his body and transformed into his true body, facing towards the enemy with his mouth wide open. Devoured by Mujukin. That soul thorn is too annoying. Although he has Mujukin's memory and knows the harm of the soul thorn, it is a pity that he has to spend time practicing and does not have much time to practice the soul thorn. Otherwise, he could also use the soul thorn to attack Mujukin. Then he can swallow Mujukin directly. Both of them are soul bodies, so he can just swallow them. You let him run away before, do you want to run away this time? No way. Mujukin looked at his mouth. His emotions were swallowing him up again. Don't you know how to find another way? Can't he swallow it back? He appeared in his soul body just to swallow the Suzaku ancestor, and he took action first. Just when the Suzaku ancestor bit him, Mujukin flew to the top of the Suzaku ancestor's head in the blink of an eye, and opened his big mouth and bit the Suzaku ancestor's head. After screaming in agony, the Suzaku ancestor lost a large piece of his head. After the Suzaku ancestor cried out in pain, he ran away quickly. His soul was quite weak at first glance. His soul has become weaker than Mujukin's over the years. He took a big bite out of him so hard, fast, and accurately that the Suzaku ancestor's heart was bleeding. He looked at Mujukin angrily. He wanted to devour him right away. Mujukin swallowed the soul of the Suzaku ancestor. Unexpectedly, the soul was so delicious, and he smacked his lips. He looked evilly at the obviously weak ancestor Suzaku. He was in a good mood and wanted to eat him up today. Looking at Mujukin's cannibalistic eyes, the Suzaku ancestor felt frightened. He looked at Mujukin warily. Mujukin will definitely take advantage of the victory to pursue him. He flew towards the Suzaku ancestor and at the same time struck with several soul stabs. Ancestor Suzaku moved and ran away quickly, dodging the soul stab, but was suddenly bitten by Mujukin on the top of his head. "Ah! It hurts. This is a bite to the soul." The pain is so painful that the Suzaku ancestor can't express what kind of pain it feels. This is really painful to the soul. After being bitten twice by Mujukin, the Suzaku ancestor was already wilting. He wanted to escape, but unfortunately he couldn't. So he had no choice but to run away. Mujukin, while preventing him from entering his body, chased the Suzaku ancestor and bit him from time to time. At this time, the Suzaku ancestor could only run away and had no chance to fight back. "Mujukin, please spare my ancestor's life." When the Suzaku ancestor was half bitten, he ran while trying to spare his life. He gave up. I think that he, the great ancestor of Suzaku, ended up begging for mercy in front of his descendants. Mujukin didn't bother to care about his begging for mercy. Now he could just swallow the Suzaku Patriarch in one gulp. Now, he has to play a cat and mouse game. He has been trapped for so many years and feels so aggrieved. How could he be let go so easily and let him taste despair? Mujukin didn't say a word, didn't let down his guard at all, and chased after the Suzaku ancestor to bite him. Ah ah ah! The screams of the Suzaku ancestor sounded like divine sounds to Mujukin's ears, and they were extremely beautiful. He finally laughed heartily. Ha ha ha, ancestor, run quickly. This space is limited after all. No matter where Suzaku ancestor runs, he can't escape Mujukin's pursuit. The Suzaku ancestor was in despair. Soon, Mujukin bit him again. At this time, only 1/3 of Suzaku ancestor's soul was left. Since he was so weak, Mujukin didn't even need to chase him, but just watched him run away in embarrassment. Jumping up and down, feeling very upset. How is it? Ancestor, have you felt despair? You are an old fool. You don't know how to practice well in this tower, but you still want to seize my body. Do you think I am so easy to seize my body? No, 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 my ancestor will never take away your life again. Please spare my life. I will give you all my treasures. The Suzaku Patriarch was really scared. He said tremblingly. Ha! Is it possible to spare your life? Do you think I am stupid, and spare you a life so that you can take revenge on me later? I will swallow you up, and all these treasures belong to me. Ancestor Suzaku's heart was trembling. Only then did he realize that Mujukin was a ruthless person, and he regretted it to death. Why did he offend this evil star in the first place? He trembled and begged Mujukin. Mujukin doesn't like him. With a wave of his hand, his 5 fingers turned into claws. He instantly picked up Suzaku ancestor, looked at him and said, "You shouldn't be greedy. Pay the price for your greed." After saying that, he opened his mouth and swallowed the soul of the Suzaku ancestor. Then he immediately returned to his body to refine the soul of the Suzaku ancestor. What was swallowed before was not refined at all, but now it is refined together. After the Suzaku ancestor was devoured by Mujukin, his Nanming Liwo lost its master's instructions and became an ownerless fire. Mujukin's Nanming Liwo took the opportunity to devour the Suzaku ancestor's Nanming Liwo. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 773. Chapter 773 Meeting. Nanming Liwo, who had swallowed up the flames, immediately returned to Mujukin's danshan and started refining. A year later, Mujukin slowly opened his eyes and smiled slightly. Although the price paid this time was not small, his gain was not small. Not only did he obtain all the memories of the Suzaku ancestor, but also all the memories of the Suzaku ancestor. All the treasures belong to him. Of course, the biggest treasure is the demon suppression tower. The king of 10,000 demons is indeed imprisoned below. The king of 10,000 demons is said to be the king of 10,000 demons, but it is actually much better than the Suzaku ancestor. He has never done anything harmful to the world at all. It was the Suzaku ancestor who didn't like him and ran to fight him. As a result, both sides suffered losses. The Suzaku ancestor simply suppressed the soul of the king of demons at the bottom of the tower. He also entered the demon-suppressing tower to heal his injuries, and then let the demon-suppressing tower fall from the void. This demon-suppressing tower is a super-grade artifact. It fell from the void and injured and killed many people at the time. Super-grade artifacts are artifacts that are beyond the scope of top-grade artifacts. People often call this type of artifacts super-grade artifacts. There is no definition of how much beyond. This disaster, Mujukin cursed, it would be best to die. In addition, After refining the soul of the Suzaku ancestor, he got back all his previous memories. Now it is no different from before. The only thing is that he has the memory of the Suzaku ancestor and has his treasure. Furthermore, after refining the soul of the Suzaku ancestor, his cultivation level was promoted to the middle stage of the God Emperor, and his soul also reached the perfection of the God Emperor realm. With the memory of the Suzaku ancestor, Mujukin summoned the contract method and immediately gave the demon suppression tower to the contract. Hunted to look at the other treasures for the time being, Mujukin only glanced at the Nanming Liwo in his danshan. It was still being refined and would not wake up for a while. So Mujukin came out immediately. He was going to find Wan'er. I'm afraid she's dying of anxiety now. After Mujukin stepped out of the demon suppression tower, he immediately took out the jade of sound transmission and sent a message to Yuan. Yuan was wandering around the god realm. On this day, she felt the sound transmission jade making a sound. She immediately picked up the sound transmission jade and looked at it. Then, her face was full of surprise. She didn't care that this was in public, and she flashed into the space. Use the realm gate to find Mujukin. After finding it, she ducked out of the boundary gate. Mujukin. Yuan threw herself into Mujukin's arms. Her whole body was buried deep in Mujukin's arms. Her tears couldn't stop flowing. This time, they were not sad but excited. The moment she saw Mujukin, she felt so fantasy, like a big dream. Mujukin patted her gently, kissed her head gently, and said softly, Wan'er, I miss you so much. He just couldn't let go of his Wan'er, so at that critical moment, he split his soul into two and hid it. Speaking, he picked up Yuan and ducked into the demon suppression tower, reaching the 10th floor. His demon suppression tower is of a higher level than Yuan's space. He can only bring Yuan into his demon suppression tower, but not into Yuan's space. Once he enters by force, Yuan's space will collapse or be swallowed by the demon suppression tower. There is only one room and an altar on the 10th floor. There is a jade box on the altar. The jade box is indeed the green lotus of good fortune. And under the jade box is the teleportation array, to where the king of monsters is imprisoned. Mujukin moved a bed out of the space. He was not interested in looking at that thing now. His eyes and heart were filled with his Wan'er. Mujukin gently put her on the bed, kissed her lips gently, and released his thoughts. A few days later, Yuan took out the two treasures and met with Mujukin. Dad, Liangbao was surprised and happy to see Mujukin intact, and threw himself into his arms. Mujukin hugged his two sons and rubbed their heads. Dad has made you worry. Mom is most worried, Dabao said angrily. Well, Dad knows. Mujukin looked at Yuan with affectionate eyes. The son of a cheating mother, Yuan glared at them and wanted to make her unable to get out of bed for a few days. The two babies touched their noses, and Dabao asked again, Dad, how did you escape? Mother and son were all curious. Even though the soul cards were broken, Dad could still turn the tables and turn defeat into victory. Mujukin led the mother and son to sit down. Yuan also moved a coffee table out. The mother and son ate while listening to Mujukin's words. Mujukin told the story of his escape in detail, and this was how to prevent Yuan, mother and son from encountering similar situations in the future. So that's it? Dad is still smart. Bao sighed and looked at his father with admiration. If he would have jumped into the space in that situation, he would never have thought of splitting his soul in two. It is in vain to enter the space in front of that old ghost. So the end is death. Mujukin looked at Bao and said seriously, it's not that Dad is smart but that Dad was lucky this time. When Dad was promoted to God Emperor, he refined an invisible artifact, which saved Dad's life. Wait. When I have free time, Dad will refine a few more to prepare. In fact, their divine clothes have an invisibility function, but since the divine clothes have too many functions, the invisibility function is not that strong. The invisible artifact he refined himself has the basic function of invisibility. Like Yuan Wanyan, it has a single function but is more powerful. Liang Bao nodded. The second treasure looked at this place, and the second treasure asked, "Dad, where is this place?" "It didn't look like this was my mother's space," so Bao asked about it. "This is the old divine tower actually, it's called the Demon Suppression Tower now it's my father's contracted artifact you can come in at any time if you want to practice here you don't have to worry about not having the divine stone." "Oh, which floor is this?" Bao asked again. Mujukin stretched out his hand to rub Bao's head. This brat would be frightened when he heard this. He said, "The 10th floor." "Huh," Liang Bao was really startled. Bao glanced at this place and curled his lips and said, "This is the 10th level that is said to be inaccessible. There is nothing here. It's made so mysterious." Bao also got up and walked around in front of the altar a few times, pointed at the jade box and asked, "Dad, what is in this?" "If you like the green lotus, take it," Mujukin said lightly. Heaven, the green lotus of creation. This legendary green lotus of creation creates various divine powers. The two treasures were stunned again. Even Yuan was extremely surprised when she heard that it was the green lotus of creation. She also stepped forward and asked Mujukin to open the jade box and take a look to see what the green lotus of creation looked like. Green lotus of creation, green lotus of chaos, green lotus of pure world, red lotus of destruction, these are all divine objects that existed when the world first opened. Each one has different functions, but its own power is also powerful. It's amazing to get one thing, but here is a green lotus of good fortune. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 774. Chapter 774, Creation of Green Lotus. Mujukin nodded. He removed the prohibition on the jade box, and then opened the jade box. As soon as he opened it, circles of colorful light suddenly rushed out from the box, illuminating the entire room in a colorful and beautiful way. The family of four stood around the green lotus in a daze, and the colorful light flashed, and the four of them could clearly see the appearance of the green lotus. I saw that this green lotus of creation was 1 foot square with 9 leaves in total. The leaves were similar to the green lotus of chaos. They both had 9 leaves, and the 9 leaves had 9 colors. The 9 leaves are crystal clear, like fine jade, making people want to touch them. They all know that each color corresponds to the color of various divine powers. There is a palm-sized lotus pod in the middle, with 9 small holes on the lotus pod, where the lotus seeds are. But now there are no lotus seeds, and they also know that these 9 lotus seeds have created these 9 kinds of divine power. The various forces in the universe now are created by it. The 4 people were amazed at how much power such a small lotus seed contained. It was a universe, not a world. It would be great if this was refined into a divine weapon, Dabao murmured. Mujukin patted him. If you want a divine weapon, wait until Dad's cultivation reaches the level of the God Emperor's great consummation before he can refine it for you. Refining it now is a waste of materials. Dabao said, Dad, give this to the second treasure to refine. I don't need it. Mujukin glanced at Dabao with admiration. In front of this treasure, Dabao could still maintain a normal heart and let it go to his younger brother. He looked at Bao again and asked, What about you? Do you want it? Bao hesitated for a moment and said, If you want to refine a divine weapon, do you want to refine the whole plant? Mujukin nodded, Of course, if you refine it as a whole, it will be more powerful. If you dismantle it and refine it, the artifact will be no different from ordinary artifacts. Bao was very sorry. He thought that if he could break it and refine it, his family of 4 could have it. Forget about ordinary artifacts. They have no shortage of ordinary artifacts now. Moreover, it would be a pity to dismantle a good luck green lotus, so he said, Then forget it, put it here first, and when you find a treasure similar to this in the future, you can help me and my brother refine it. Mujukin patted him and said, "Okay, seeing that you two brothers can be so close, your parents are happy for you. Let's leave it here for now until Dad's strength is reached." Liang Bao nodded. Yuan looked at the green lotus and was thinking about what Wan Buddha said to her at that time. He only said that there was a box on it, but did not say what was in the box. Whether Wan Buddha knew what was in the box or not, she would not tell Wan Buddha. She believed that when Wan Buddha encouraged her to come to the demon suppression tower, Wan Buddha must have known about it, but she didn't know why he didn't tell her. Thinking of the restrictions outside the jade box, Yuan understood somewhat. Wan Buddha was afraid that she would not be able to open this restriction, so she would probably beg him, and then use his strength to take possession of this green lotus. Yuan's eyes tightened. Wan Fo's scheming was so deep. However, Wan Buddha would never have imagined that this demon-suppressing tower was contracted by Mujukin, and this treasure was easily obtained by them. Thinking of the depth of Wan Fo, she would not be able to tell Wan Fo about the demon suppression tower even if she was killed. She did not want to cause any trouble. As for the man Wan Buddha, he is not a great monk who does not eat the fireworks of the world, but a man with a deep scheming mind. Yuan had an urgent urge to throw him out of the space and stay in her space to plot against her. So she said to Mujukin and his son, "Listen, you three, don't talk about the demon suppression tower to the outside world. Only the four of us in the family know about it." Mujukin and his son didn't know what Yuan meant specifically, but they nodded anyway. Mujukin covered the box, put it back and asked the two treasures, "Do you two want to continue training in the tower or what?" The two treasures looked at each other. They had been practicing in their mother's space for so long, but they still went to practice. It happened to be convenient to practice now, so Dabao said, "Dad, let's go to practice. Just send us to the third floor. You guys have to be careful, Mujukin take a look at the Suzaku ancestors' stuff to see if there is anything suitable for the two treasures, get some for them," Yuan said hurriedly when she heard that they were going to practice. Mujukin nodded, and his consciousness immediately checked on the 9th floor. The small space on the 9th floor was carved out independently by the Suzaku ancestor, and all his treasures were there. Mujukin picked out a few items that were suitable for Liang Bao, and then moved the artifact to Liang Bao's hands. Liang Bao looked at these artifacts and liked them very much. All the artifacts collected by Suzaku ancestor were top-grade artifacts or super-grade artifacts. At that time, these artifacts were nothing. The two treasures watched with admiration. Now they can't use the full power of these artifacts, but they are much better than their existing artifacts. The two of them happily took the artifact to the 2nd floor. "Waner, what about you? Do you want to go to the training camp?" Mujukin asked Yuan after Liang Bao left. Yuan asked, "What are the things at the back?" Mujukin immediately told her everything that would appear on the next few floors. Yuan shook her head after hearing this, "Then we can go there later." She doesn't want to go to test the use of various powers. She is not in a hurry and wants to spend some good time with Mujukin. After so many years of separation, we still have to stay for 180 years no matter what. Mujukin hugged her. During this period, he had to decorate this floor, which would become their family's home from now on. "Okay, let's go to the bottom floor to see the King of Demons." Mujukin also told Yuan that there was actually another layer below the demon suppression tower, which contained the King of Demons. Mujukin also told the story about the Suzaku Patriarch and the King of Demons. This King of Demons should also be dealt with. If it is worth letting go, then let him go. Only then did Yuan realize how this sacred tower came to be. She asked, "Is there any danger to the King of Demons?" "The prison is still here, which means that the King of Demons must be more powerful than the Suzaku ancestor, otherwise why would he be imprisoned?" "I don't know, so I went to take a look and deal with it early. In my memory, Ancestor Suzaku has not visited him for a long time. I don't know how the king of demons is doing in the ban. And he doesn't like the presence of threats in his territory. Then let's go and take a look, Yuan said. Mujukan nodded, took out the sacred stone and placed it on the teleportation array. When the teleportation array started, Mujukan picked up Yuan and jumped into the teleportation array. When the two of them came out, they saw what looked like a prison cell below. There was a cell like a prison. It's just that there's no one inside. Mujukan lifted the restriction and took Yuan to the outermost room. He waved his hand again, and the restriction outside the room disappeared. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 775. Chapter 775, Recruiting the King of Demons. Huh? How come there's a different person? What about old Suzaku? As soon as the restriction was opened, a voice came from inside. The sound is extremely pleasant. Then an enchanting face instantly appeared at the window, blinking a pair of big, beautiful, and innocent eyes, looking at the two of them doubtfully. Yuan and Yuan were also dumbfounded. Is this the king of demons? This is different from what Yuan imagined. Among all the monsters, he must look like a monster, but this guy looks harmless and cute. It's so cute. Are you the king of demons? Yuan asked softly, for fear of disturbing those beautiful eyes. Yes, who else is it if it's not me? The king of demons tilted his head, as if Yuan asked him that what he said was nonsense. Isn't this obvious? Mujukan looked at the king of demons from the side. This guy was different from what Suzaku ancestor remembered. In his memory, the king of demons was sinister and cunning, but he was not as simple-minded as he was. And this guy's strength is not weak, and he is not a soul body but a physical body. Mujukan secretly thought that it was strange that with the current strength of the king of demons, he could break this restriction and come out on his own. In the memory of ancestor Suzaku, this place is a prison that can imprison all kinds of beasts, and any beast can be imprisoned. How could someone as powerful as the king of demons still be imprisoned? Ancestor Suzaku has no memory. So Mujukan was a little surprised. Is there something else about this demon-suppressing tower that the Suzaku ancestor didn't know? Mujukan thought for a while and asked him, why don't you come out by yourself? Get out? I want to get out too, but I can't get out of this room. The king of demons then looked at Mujukan and spoke to him seriously. Why? Haven't you recovered from your strong strength? Mujukan asked doubtfully, and at the same time he looked at the house. It was true that there was a restriction on the door, but that restriction could be broken easily with the strength of the king of demons. In this case, the problem should be in the house. Are you the son of old Suzaku? Why don't you know? Huh? No, the power of blood in your body is impure. You are not the son of old Suzaku. No wonder you don't know. Didn't you feel the suppression of blood when you came down? The king of demons also asked doubtfully. Bloodline suppression? Mujukan looked at this place, shook his head and said, I don't feel it. That's strange. Although the Suzaku bloodline in your body is impure, you also have the bloodline of the mythical beast Suzaku. Why aren't you suppressed? Only me. Yuan also looked at Mujukan, who shook his head at her. He didn't want to discuss this issue with the king of demons, and he couldn't suppress him. It was probably because the demon-suppressing tower was his artifact. How could he suppress his master with his own artifact? The king of 10,000 demons didn't know that he was already the owner of the demon suppression tower, and thought he was the Suzaku ancestor. So it's normal for him to be strange. He asked again, then do you want to go out? Of course I do. I'm in this hellish place every day, and I'm almost suffocated to death. The king of demons curled his lips. Mujukan glanced at Yuan and asked her if she should contract this king of demons. It would be a waste of natural resources to release such a powerful king of demons without a contract. The opportunity is in distress, it's the ancient mythical beast. It doesn't matter if he takes advantage of the situation. Yuan definitely understood what Mujukan meant, and she was also considering whether to contract with the King of Demons. This King of Demons is a little silly, but he is very powerful, much more powerful than a little snake. If you contract with him, he will at least have a powerful helper. Now she is in need of powerful help. So Yuan nodded. Mujukan then said to the King of Demons, "You can go out if you want, but you have to recognize her as your master." Mujukan pointed at Yuan. "Recognize the master? You want me to recognize the master?" The King of Demons was surprised. He looked at Yuan and looked at Yuan. He wants to go out, but he is not willing to become a divine pet with a human being. But if he wanted to go out, he probably had no choice, so the King of Demons suddenly withered. Mujukan and Yuan were not in a hurry and just waited for him. They guessed that the King of 10,000 Demons would probably agree. He was not angry when he was asked to make a contract with Yuan, nor was he arrogant or looking down on Yuan when he looked at her. Only entangled. Moreover, anyone locked up in this dark place would probably only be thinking about getting out. The two of them saw the confusion on his face, sometimes frowning, sometimes relaxing. Anyway, after being confused for a long time, he looked at Yuan and nodded towards her. Yuan was overjoyed and smiled at Mujukan. She then popped out a drop of blood essence. At the same time, the King of 10,000 Demons also popped out a drop of blood essence. Mujukan waved his hand, and the drop of blood essence from the King of 10,000 Demons was absorbed by Mujukan. Suck it out and immediately merge with Yuan's essence and blood. Seeing this, Yuan immediately performed a complex set of hand seals. When the seals were completed, they flew into the fused essence and blood. Yuan once again performed a complicated set of tricks, splitting the fused essence and blood into two parts, with one half flying into the center of her eyebrows, and the other half sent by Mujukan into the eyebrows of the King of Demons. The contracted King of Demons looked at Yuan with a sad face. When he watched Yuan perform the contract trick, he was quite surprised and knew that his plan failed today. "I didn't expect that this little goddess actually knew the contract method from ancient times." What he was thinking was that she wanted to contract with Yuan based on her cultivation, and she was using the current contract method. The current contract law enforcement did not have much binding force on him. A contract was equivalent to no contract, and it could not bind him. So he struggled for a long time before agreeing. The reason why he is so entangled is, of course, how can he, the noble King of Demons, be contracted by a human being and still not be laughed to death by others if he tells it? But in order to get out of here, it's okay to admit it. I didn't expect this little goddess to know the ancient contract technique. But she is the master and he is the servant. Then he has no choice but to accept his fate and admit defeat. Yuan looked at the dejected look of the King of Demons, and smiled slightly. Just like the pets she had contracted with before, she thought she could not truly contract with him. How can it be? This set of contract techniques was exactly what she saw in the Sutra Pavilion. I didn't expect to use it today. Yuan then smiled and asked Mujukan to release the King of Demons. Mujukan hit the restriction on the door with a burst of divine power. Once the restriction was removed, the door opened automatically. The King of 10,000 Demons walked out. He bowed to Yuan and said respectfully, 10,000 demons have met the master. Are you going to call me Wan Yao? Yuan asked in surprise, this name is too casual. At the same time, she also looked at him. This guy was dressed in white, which was completely inconsistent with his silly appearance. Yes, master, the slave's name is 10,000 Demons. The slave used to be very strong, and everyone gave me the King of 10,000 Demons. Oh. Yuan understood. She thought that the King of 10,000 Demons was the king who commanded all demons, so he was called the King of 10,000 Demons. Nearly made a big mistake. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 776. Chapter 776, Defrauding 10,000 Buddhas. Yuan nodded, feeling happy in her heart. It didn't matter if he had thousands of monsters, as long as he could be her thug. So after she received the monsters in the space, she said to Mujukan, "Then let's go up." Mujukan rubbed her head lovingly and nodded. They came down to deal with the demons, so they went up naturally as soon as the demons were taken away. The two walked hand in hand to the teleportation array, teleported and then returned to the 10th floor. "Wanner, I won't be able to enter your space in the future. I plan to build a palace here. What do you think?" As soon as Mujukan came back, he asked Yuan if he was going to transform this place. "This place is so bare that the couple cannot have any privacy if they want to be alone together. It was okay when it was just the two of them, but not so good when the sun was around." Yuan nodded, "Okay, then you can get busy. I'll go into the space to see the monsters." You ducked into the space. In the space, all the demons greedily absorbed the divine power here. This little goddess gave him too many surprises, and he never expected that there was such a space in her body. This space was rarely seen even in the ancient times, which shows that this little goddess is a person of great luck. "Owner." When Wan Yao saw Yuan coming in, he immediately came over and called her respectfully. "Well, you can find a place to live in the mountains over there. There are many of your companions there." Yuan pointed to the forest in the distance and said, "There the little snake is now." Xiaoqing and Dehe were at Yu Heiran's place. Before she could take them back, she followed Liang Bao's little snake back to the space. Wan Yao nodded and looked at the forest. He felt happy and immediately flew towards the forest. The little snake in the forest suddenly felt a powerful aura flying towards him. He stepped out to look and saw that it was a transformed divine beast. The little snake is not afraid. He knows that only people and animals related to his master can enter the space. Wan Yao also noticed him, stopped immediately, raised his hands to the little snake and said, "I am the master's divine pet, and my name is Wan Yao. My name is Little Snake, my master's first divine pet." The little snake returned the greeting politely. "Oh, welcome to meet you. The master asked me to come here to find a place to live. Where do you live? Can I live with you?" Wan Yao looked at the little snake. This soaring snake was not as strong as him, but his bloodline was nobler, so he instinctively suppressed him. He also instinctively respected the little snake. Of course, there is also a long-lost closeness. We are all beasts. He has been alone under the demon-suppressing tower for too long, and he wants to get close to the same kind of people he sees. Of course, except for that Suzaku shamelessly came to fight with him out of nowhere. The two of them were already equal in strength, but both ended up hurting each other. That didn't let go of his soul and took him into the demon-suppressing tower. Inside, he didn't even know how many years he stayed there before recovering his cultivation. The little snake nodded, he would definitely do what his master ordered. After all, he was the master's first divine pet. As the eldest brother, he naturally had to take care of the younger brother. He personally took Wan Yao in to choose a place. Yuan saw their interaction from a distance, with a slight smile on her face. Having too many favors from God is also a nuisance. I was afraid that they would not unite in private and start working among themselves. Fortunately, they did not. The 10,000 monsters did not rely on their strength to be arrogant, and the little snake did not look down on those who came after him. Next, she still has 3 things to deal with. The first one was Mujukan's clone. She immediately took Mujukan's clone back to the 10th floor of the demon suppression tower. Yuan wanted to let Mujukan see what to do with this clone. Should he keep it like her clone or merge it with his main soul? The clone cultivates in her space, and without the control of the main soul, he will cultivate a second Mujukan. He has an independent soul, and it is difficult to control him. Yuan didn't want to have two independent Mujukan and two husbands. How embarrassing it would be. Mujukan saw Yuan coming out with his clone. He stopped what he was doing. Waner brought him out. When Mujukan's clone saw Mujukan, he stood aside silently. Yuan, I just want to ask you what to do with him. Should you keep him on the Soul Mountain, or should you fuse him? It's better to fuse it. I'll leave a trace of my soul to make a new soul card later and put it up as before. Mujukan understood what would happen if he allowed his clone to practice alone on Soul Mountain. Well, you should deal with it as soon as possible. Mujukan nodded, and without further ado, he rolled up his clone and entered the 9th level of space. With the matter of Mujukan's clone dealt with, the next thing is the second matter. Yuan returned to the space and invited 10,000 Buddhas out. The two of them sat under the enlightenment tea. Yuan made tea and gave a cup to 10,000 Buddhas. Amitabha, is there something wrong with the donor asking the poor monk to come out? Yeah, Yuan nodded. Wanfo suddenly felt a bad premonition in his heart, and he quietly waited for Yuan's next words. Sure enough, Yuan said, now that I am the leader of Tiandao sect, has the divine monk ever thought about returning to the divine world? Wanfo and Tiandao have revenge. Now Tiandao's own is her head. Naturally, there will be no resentment, so Wanfo is time to leave the space. She had forgotten about this matter because of Mujukan's incident. Oh, Wanfo was surprised. He never expected that Yuan could become the head of the Tiandao sect. It's really unpredictable. Yuan asked him this, clearly trying to drive him away. Wanfo Shenning, it was time for him to leave here, but it was even more difficult to see her after he left. He glanced at Yuan, who was still there, and sighed in his heart. This girl never looked at him, so why should he deceive himself and linger on? No matter how thick-skinned he is, he can't be so shameless. If he stays here even after people drive him away, he just doesn't know what's going on. At the same time, he also understood that Yuan was now the head of the Tiandao sect, so it would be impossible for him to avenge the grievances between him and the Tiandao sect. For her, he is willing to let go of the past. 10,000 Buddhas smiled bitterly in his heart. He is a divine monk, and he still needs others to liquidate him. So he nodded and said, in this case, I, the poor monk, should go back to the God realm. It just so happens that my old place is still there. Meaning that you girl, should come and see him more often in the future. Yuan smiled and said, well, before you go out, can you give me the souls of the 4 ancestors of Tiandao sect? In fact, Yuan could not see the situation inside 10,000 Buddha's temple. She heard Ming Qi say that the souls of the 4 ancestors of Tiandao sect who did not know their sect might be imprisoned by 10,000 Buddhas in 10,000 Buddha's temple. She did not know whether they were there or not. This is purely deceiving 10,000 Buddhas. Wanfo frowned. Just now, he was thinking of taking the souls of the 4 ancestors into his disciples. If he couldn't avenge them, he would let the 4 of them turn to Buddhism, which would disgust them to death. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 777. Chapter 777, Returning the Souls of the 4 Ancestors. As soon as Wanfo frowned, Yuan knew that the spirits of the 4 ancestors were in Wanfo temple. She only looked at Wanfo with a smile. Let's see what he will do. Thousands of Buddhas were stunned by her smile. This woman couldn't be cold-hearted to him. 10,000 Buddhas recited the pure heart mantra in his heart. Yuan stretched out her hand to ask for someone, but it was impossible for him not to give it. He nodded and waved his hand, and 4 spirits appeared next to him. Yuan looked at these 4 weak souls, glanced at 10,000 Buddhas, said nothing, and just sent them to the Soul Mountain. Her expression did not change, she just raised her hands to 10,000 Buddhas and said, "Thank you, the holy monk." It was good that 10,000 Buddhas did not destroy these 4 ancestors. Yuan felt that 10,000 Buddhas were sometimes too kind-hearted. No matter what the purpose of keeping the souls of these 4 people is, leaving them behind is a disaster. If it were her, she would definitely wipe them all out. There are always surprises in everything. No, surprises will come. Wanfo lowered his eyelids and did not look at Yuan. He thought that Yuan would get angry when he saw these 4 souls, but he did not expect that he could calm down. He clasped his hands together and said, "Donors don't need to be polite. The poor monk didn't want to kill them. He just wanted to save them, but he failed. I hope that the Tiandao sect and my 10,000 Buddhist temple will not conflict with each other in the future. It can be regarded as a request for him to hand over his soul. He is not a saint and cannot have no grudges in his heart. He will be very annoyed if those 4 people or the Tiandao sect come to trouble him in the 10,000 Buddhist temple in the future." She also believes that as long as Yuan agrees to him, she will restrain the people of Tiandao sect. Yuan smiled in her heart. It was so funny that the great monk wanted to convert them. He clearly wanted to take them for his own use, but he failed, and he still said it so interestingly. The request made by 10,000 Buddhas is not excessive. If 10,000 Buddhas had not raised it, she would have made it clear to her great-grandfather. So she said, "Of course, as long as I stay in Tiandao sect for 1 day, I will definitely ensure that people from Tiandao sect will not harass the holy monk Kingzio again." With the benefactor's promise, the poor monk can rest easy. Yuan was amused by what he said. This was the first time she heard the great monk say words that sounded like fireworks. Wanfo only glanced at him. Yuan's charming appearance made his heart tremble. He immediately ducked into Wanfo temple for this woman. In Wanfo temple, Wanfo raised his eyes to look at Yuan, seeing her still sitting there with a smile on her face. His eyes were filled with reluctance, which eventually turned into a long sigh. He lowered his eyelids and closed his eyes to meditate. Even if you don't want to give it up, you must give it up. He is the Buddha and she is the Tao. He is a male and she is a female. Moreover, she is a married woman with 2 sons and a happy family. He is just a lonely and helpless monk who is not qualified to pursue anything. The only thing he pursues is his Buddhist path. After all, he was content to have kept her in her space for so long, so he could be considered a human being to refine his heart. Yuan didn't know Wan Buddha's thoughts. All 3 things were completed successfully. She could only send Wan Buddha out after she left the demon-suppressing tower, which would be considered a complete success. By now, Yuan had arrived at Hun Mountain and called Ming-Chi. "Great-grandfather, do you think they are these 4 ancestors?" Ming-Chi looked at the souls of the 4 ancestors in front of him and was still stunned. Then he said excitedly, yes, this is them." "Did the girl get it from 10,000 Buddhas?" Yuan nodded, "We just came back. The condition of these 4 ancestors is not good. Great-grandfather will help pick some condensation flowers and soul flowers. Waiter will make some medicinal liquid and let them take it. They will recover quickly some." Okay, great-grandfather, let's go now." Ming-Chi was very touched that the girl actually used the cherished magic medicine to save the ancestors. This merit must be reported to the ancestor of Mingzhu. Mingzhu was looking at the large swathes of concentration flowers and soul flowers and curled her lips. She didn't know how excited this junior was. So many of them are not used to save people, but are kept to give birth to cubs. However, she is quite satisfied with Yuan's approach, which shows that Yuan has a sense of responsibility and a sense of belonging to Tiandao sect. She still understands this girl, no one can force her to do something she doesn't want to do. Ming Qi quickly collected enough soul flowers and Ningxuan flowers and gave them to Yuan. Yuan sacrificed the star cauldron and refined it on the spot on Hun Mountain. Great-grandfather, please give this divine liquid to my ancestor. When a portion was refined, Yuan took it out and gave it to Ming Qi. Ming Qi took it and immediately asked one of the ancestors to drink it. In this way, Yuan refined it and Ming Qi treated it. 7 days later, the 4 ancestors woke up leisurely. "Are you Minky?" Yuan Cheng woke up and recognized Minky at a glance. Minky has met the 4 ancestors. Minky immediately saluted the 4 of them. "Wire, come and meet the 4 ancestors." Ming Qi finished the ceremony and saw that Yuan was still standing where he was. "Where is this little girl from? She's so rude," the grumpy ancestor said displeasedly. "Yuan He!" Yuan Cheng immediately shouted at Yuan He. This Yuan He was always so arrogant and didn't even look where he was, thinking that he could do whatever he wanted if he had a clear idea here. Ming Qi was stunned for a moment, then narrowed his eyes at Yuan He. This ancestor of Yuan He really didn't even think about who saved them. If he dared to scold the girl like this, he probably didn't want to live anymore. Yuan glanced at Yuan He and said lightly, "Ancestor, I don't think you are safe. I can get you out of 10,000 Buddhas, or I can send you back. Of course, I can also let your soul return before." She said want rather than rescue or exchange. This shows that she has an unusual relationship with 10,000 Buddhas and wants them back just by opening her mouth. Yuan He's fiery temper exploded on the spot. His soul was not stable enough now, otherwise he would kill the stinky the spot. "That's enough, Yuan He, why do you do this every time? Don't you know why Master gave you the Taoist title?" Yuan He, Yuan Cheng was furious. Yuan He couldn't understand. Why couldn't he understand? He stared at Yuan He, and if his eyes could kill people right now, they would have already killed Yuan He and Ling Qi. After finally saving his life, he will not return to the hands of Wan Buddha for this fool. The 4 of them are brothers in the same section. He is the senior brother and Yuan He is the junior brother. Although he has a bad temper, he is talented in cultivation and has great cultivation qualifications, which makes him deeply loved by his master. This only fueled his arrogance. In the Tiandao sect, he usually looked down upon no one except his master. He often caused trouble and was more annoying than a dog. But he has good cultivation aptitude, so everyone has no choice but to avoid him and avoid provoking him. That night, the Tiandao sect dispatched 10 ancestors of the immortal emperors to go to the 10,000 Buddhas temple to kill 10,000 Buddhas. Before leaving, the master told him that Yuan He must be protected. Yuan He, an idiot, killed all the monks he saw soon after he arrived, regardless of whether they were innocent or not. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 778. Chapter 778 Seeking Death. This angered 10,000 Buddhas, and he wanted to kill Yuan He even if he destroyed the 10,000 Buddhas temple. The 10 immortal emperors were unable to defeat 10,000 Buddhas. How could Yuan He alone be the opponent of 10,000 Buddhas? After a few moves, Yuan He was seriously injured. In order to protect him, he and his 2 other junior brothers also went up to fight with 10,000 Buddhas, but unexpectedly fell into 10,000 Buddhas' trap, and all 4 of them were seriously injured. The 4 people had to abandon their bodies. When they were about to escape, they did not expect that the space had been controlled by 10,000 Buddhas. Their souls were also chased by 10,000 Buddhas, and they were immediately imprisoned in 10,000 Buddhas' temple. This imprisonment was several eras, from ancient times to the present day. At the beginning, their souls were not that weak at all, but 10,000 Buddhas used various cruel methods to torture them every day, torturing them to this point. The great monk appeared to be compassionate in front of others and behind others, but he was actually an extremely cruel person. Yuan He was yelled at, so he shut up, but his eyes were full of hatred. Yuan didn't know what kind of person this Yun he was, but seeing the hatred in his eyes, she frowned. She couldn't let this man go. She glanced at the other three ancestors and saw that they were all looking at Yun he with angry eyes. Then she came to the three of them, bowed and said lightly, "Zai Wei has met the three ancestors." Yun he immediately said gently, "Sect Master, there is no need to be polite." Junior brother Yun he was disrespectful to the sect master just now. "Please forgive me." The three of them have long sensed the aura of the sect master's seal, indicating that this goddess is the current sect master of Tiandao sect. It's just that they are a little confused that Ming Qi will not be the leader of the clan and will be handed over to a junior. But doubts are doubts, and it is useless for them to object to these things. Tiandaozong has been the world of the Ming family since ancient times. Yuan, I think Master Yuan he has not yet been enlightened by 10,000 Buddhas, so the younger generation will not care. You stinky girl. Yuan he became furious again after hearing this. Yuan waved her hand, and the prison appeared. She grabbed Yuan he's soul and threw it into the prison. It's so noisy. Yuan clapped her hands and sent the prisoner away. Ancestor of the divine soul dared to have murderous intentions towards him. It was really too long to live. Yuan he and the other three were shocked speechless by Yuan's thunderous tactics. The three of them looked at each other, but in the end they didn't say a word of mercy. The leader of the Tiandao sect has the right to deal with the people in the sect. So what about the ancestor? Who made Yuan he so arrogant? Yuan he is doing this by himself. Ming Qi's eyes flashed. She was really good at killing chickens to scare monkeys. The three ancestors will practice here. We will send the three ancestors out when they return to Tiandao section. Yuan glanced at the three of them lightly. So what if the ancestors dared to yell at her in her territory? Do you think she can't deal with him? Except for the relatives around her, there is no one in this world that she dare not touch. After saying that, Yuan took Minky out of the Soul Mountain, and fixed the three of them in one place, only letting them absorb the soul power, and not letting them pick her soul flower and concentration flower for healing and recovery. It was interesting enough to give each person some divine liquid to keep their spirits alive. She will not be stupid enough to cure them all. She only needs to save their lives. When the time comes, she will return to Tiandao sect and let them return to Shendi to heal their wounds. Girl, what about Yuan he patriarch? Minky asked Yuan as soon as he came out. Don't worry, great-grandfather. Wei has his own plans. Yuan he and I will not be released, Yuan said lightly. Yuan he is a madman, and she will not let him out to cause trouble for her. He was imprisoned, but she didn't kill him. She just kept him in there, and she could make excuses for whoever came to trouble her in the future. Okay, whatever happens, my great-grandfather will take care of it anyway. Girl, don't worry. After all, Tiandao sect is still our Ming family's final decision, and the ancestor of Mingzhu is still here. Ming Qi patted Yuan's hand gently. Said the head. Thank you, great-grandfather. Yuan smiled sweetly at Ming Qi. She was sincerely grateful to Ming Qi. This old man did not harm their family like Ming Ao and others, but protected their family at every turn. Such an old man deserves respect. There's no need to be polite to my great-grandfather. Go and do your work, little girl, while my great-grandfather goes to find my ancestor. Good. These three matters have come to an end, and Yuan made room to help Mujukan arrange it. As soon as she came out of the space, the three ancestors on Hun Mountain started talking. Yuan Hua said, Senior brother, aren't you afraid that master will blame this little sect master for treating junior brother Yuan he like this? Their master is the one who protects his shortcomings the most, and Yuan he is his favorite disciple. If the little sect leader treats his junior like this, I'm afraid this matter will cause quite a stir in the future. Yuan Cheng looked at Yuan Hua and said, You don't have to worry so much. Don't underestimate this little sect leader. We can just practice with peace of mind. Given Yuan's decisive temperament, he is not a master who can suffer losses. So what if he protects his shortcomings, master? It was his junior brother who initiated the incident, and the ancestor of the Ming family will watch his junior suffer? It was only Yuan He's fault that he offended anyone, especially the head of the Tiandao sect. Also knowing clearly that this is the back of Mingzu's ancestor, the current sect leader, and still dares to provoke him, he is simply seeking death. I still can't change my temper after so many years. I really don't know how many times I have to die before I realize how stupid I am. Yuan Hua and Yuan Shen nodded. Junior brother Yuan He's temperament should be tempered in prison. Wanfo was too gentle to him before. If it weren't for his violent temper, their brothers and sisters wouldn't have died. Is the matter settled? As soon as Yuan came out, Mujukan rushed over and hugged her and asked. Yeah, Yuan nodded and looked at the glorious palace in front of her. She also said that she was helping, as everyone had decorated it. So she took Mujukan's hand and entered the palace. The inside has been decorated by Mujukan, all according to her preferences. Yuan kissed Mujukan on the cheek and asked, "Do you have any sons?" Of course Mujukan pinched her nose. How could a father like him forget his son? The two of them spent a long time in the demon suppression tower before they came out. The first time they came out, the two went to the old site of 10,000 Buddhas temple and moved 10,000 Buddhas out. Amitabha, thank you two donors. 10,000 Buddhas looked at the desert with mixed feelings in their hearts. Yuan waved her hand, no need to thank you, you have to thank yourself. If you hadn't helped me, we wouldn't be here today. Don't you Buddhists often say that what you sow is what you will reap? Amitabha, the donor's wisdom is not shallow. Farewell, let's go. Yuan immediately interrupted Wanfo, waved his hand at him, and took Mujukan into the space and returned to Tiandao sect. Tiandao sect, in front of the divine land, Yuan took out the token and threw it into the air. A divine light flashed across the token, opening a light door, and she stepped into the divine land. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 779. Chapter 779, Divine Land. Yuan looked at this sacred land that was like a small world and was filled with admiration in her heart, because this was the independent space that Mingzu and her male ancestor carved out on this mountain. The divine power here is so strong that I feel like I have arrived in another world. In fact, this is not the case. This divine place is still on this mountain. It just moved the divine veins in, but compared to her space, the divine power is still inferior. Yuan took a look at the various palaces in the land before she moved Ming Qi out. Today I am not only here to remove Yuan Cheng and the others, but also to meet the ancestors. Girl, have you come to the land of God? Ming Qi secretly said to Yuan that she has the boundary gate in her hand, so she can go there quickly and conveniently. Yuan nodded towards him, great-grandfather, take way to the ancestor of Shang Yuan. In the land of gods, the ancestor Shang Yuan is the person with authority, and she handed the souls of the three ancestors into his hands. She is not someone who does good deeds without leaving their names behind. She will quietly return them to the place of worship without others knowing. She saved the souls of the four ancestors, which shows that her sect master is not the kind of person who is just trying to gain fame and reputation, but has no ability. Her current cultivation level is not high, but that does not mean that she is a useless person. She cannot be allowed to be underestimated by the people of Tiandao sect. Good. Ming Qi responded and took her to a shrine. This temple is not big, but it is of a very high level. It is a super artifact. Ming Qi played a divine technique and hit it on the palace. After a while, a voice came from the palace, "Come in." Then the palace door of the shrine slowly opened. Ming Qi took Yuan and walked in. In the palace, a silver-haired old man sat cross-legged in the middle of the hall. The grandson stepped forward and said respectfully to the silver-haired old man, "I have met my ancestor. This person is Shang Yuan." He opened his eyes and pointed in front of him. The two of them understood and each took out a futon and sat in front of him. Shang Yuan looked at Yuan, "You are the new sect leader." Yuan nodded and said respectfully, "Back to ancestors, yes, Junior Ziwei." Shang Yuan just hummed lightly, without too much emotion, and then looked at Minky, "It's been so long since you came to see me. Is your injury healed?" Shang Yuan talked to Ming Qi in a kind tone and called himself old man, just like an amiable elder. Yuan didn't mind. It would be strange if he was so cold and indifferent to his great-grandfather. "Ming Qi, back to my ancestor, my disciple's injury has healed. I brought Wei here today to report something to my ancestor." "Oh? Is there anything you need to report to me?" Shang Yuan was a little surprised. He had not cared about Tiandao sect's affairs for a long time. "Is there anything that needs to be reported to him?" Ming Qi looked at Yuan, who nodded. She didn't want to stay here any longer. Shang Yuan didn't like her, so there was no need for her to feel uncomfortable here. Finish things early and leave early. She immediately waved out the souls of the three ancestors of Yuan Cheng. "I've met the ancestor." When Yuan Cheng and the others saw Shang Yuan, they immediately greeted him respectfully. "Is it you?" Shang Yuan was surprised. Although he didn't care about Tiandao sect's affairs, it didn't mean that he didn't know the big and small things that had happened in Tiandao sect over the years. 4 disciples from the Battle of 10,000 Buddhas never came back. He knew very well that he had looked for them but could not find them. Seeing Yuan bring them back now really surprised him. You must know that in the God realm, he is said to be the second strongest in strength. No one dares to say that he is the strongest. He can't even find someone, but this little goddess has found her back. There are indeed 2 brushes, which should not be underestimated. The 3 of them said respectfully, "Yes, ancestor, it's us, it's the sect master who saved us from the hands of 10,000 Buddhas." After speaking, the 3 of them nodded gratefully towards Yuan. 10,000 Buddhas are indeed still alive. A few people nodded. "Aren't there 4 of you? Why are there only 3 of you back?" Shang Yuan looked at the 3 of them. Yuan Cheng and the others could only look at Yuan. They did not dare to talk nonsense about Yuan He. Yuan knew that they did not dare to say anything, so she said, "Back to my ancestors, Yuan, and my ancestors are in prison." "Oh? Why?" Shang Yuan looked a little unhappy when he heard that Yuan He was in prison. Speaking of which, Yuan Cheng and the other 4 are still his direct disciples. Although Yuan He acts arrogantly, his cultivation qualifications are really good. Even his ancestor likes it tight. What did Yuan He commit and was imprisoned? Yuan saw that his expression changed, but she didn't take it to heart. She said neither humble nor arrogantly, "Ancestor Yuan He is disrespectful to our sect master. The sect's rules stipulate that if anyone is disrespectful to the sect master has the right to punish him. If our ancestor has any questions, he can ask Yuan He and the ancestors." She was very confident in her heart and was not afraid that he would be unhappy if he went to Yuangao. Mingzu has cultivated a divine soul body in her space, but her current strength has not been restored yet. I wonder how these people will feel when they see Mingzu later? I heard that this patriarch Shang Yuan was a die-hard disciple of patriarch Mingzu. Now that I saw it, Yuan didn't think so. She is a descendant of Mingzu ancestor after all, and is still the head of Tiandao section. Yuan He was actually unhappy when he offended her. "I'm so unhappy, I'll make you cry later." Shang Yuan glanced at Ming Qi and the other 4 after hearing this. The 4 of them nodded to him at the same time. Yuan Cheng also said, "The sect master is right, it was indeed junior brother Yuan He who offended first." After hearing Yuan He's words, he looked at Yuan again, his sharp eyes seemed to see through her. Yuan is not afraid and lets him watch. Shang Yuan saw that Yuan was not afraid of him, so he said quietly, the sect leader should let him go. He has been punished in prison. There are not many people in the Tiandao sect now, and it is not easy to train a disciple. Shang Yuan's tone seems to be interceding, but in fact it is giving orders. Yuan Yao did not criticize him and insisted, when Yuan and Patriarch reflect on their situation, my sect master will naturally let him go. She is not inferior to others in terms of aura. She does not call herself a junior but the leader of the section. She has a good grasp of her aura. Even Shang Yuan secretly praised her in his heart. She is a true little goddess. With her magnanimity, she is worthy of being the descendant of Mingzhu ancestor. She has the same demeanor as she did back then. But Yuan felt uncomfortable as she directly refuted his face in public. And he really likes Yuan, his young disciple, and he might be able to inherit his lineage in the future. Yuan Cheng and the others saw that there was a bit of tension between the two of them. The three of them wanted to put in a good word for Yuan, but the three of them were really afraid of this ancestor. If they made him unhappy, they would cast a spell on you. The three of them were in a state of silence, hoping that Yuan would not go against the ancestor. Only Ming Qi said, Ancestor, what the girl said is right. The ancestor Yuan, he is really a little too arrogant. He won't say it without taking others seriously. How can you say that the girl is now the leader of the Tiandao section? The leader, his authority cannot be challenged. Anyone can challenge him. What prestige does the sect leader have? End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 780. Chapter 780. Shang Yuan. Girl has done a good job in this matter, so why does the ancestor dare to do whatever he wants in Tiandao sect? As a direct descendant of Mingzhu's ancestor, he would not dare to do this in the sect. When Ming Ao committed the murder of his brother, he deeply regretted it. Ming Ao only targeted his eldest son's family, and he was still right in other matters. He just threw him outside the territory. Shang Yuan glanced at Ming Qi. He suppressed his unhappiness. He admitted that what Ming Qi said was right, but he just wanted Yuan to let Yuan he go. The majesty of his ancestors cannot be challenged. After a long time, Shang Yuan saw that Yuan, his ancestors, and his grandson were so tough, and they seemed to refuse to accept anything, so he started to have concerns. He said to Yuan Cheng and the others, you guys go out first. The three of them glanced at Ming Qi and Yuan worriedly, and bowed to Patriarch Shang Yuan before going out. Ming Qi saw Shang Yuan like this and drove the three people away. This was to use strong force against the girl. Yuan rolled her eyes at Shang Yuan, not bothering to give him a chance to show off. Just as the three people were gone, she immediately moved the pearl out. The ancestor of Shang Yuan felt his eyes flash, and there was another person in front of him. He raised his eyes, and when he saw the pearl, his mouth opened wide. Teacher, Master. Shang Yuan suddenly stood up and hurriedly saluted Mingzhu. Mingzhu raised her hand and slapped Shang Yuan on the head. You old guy, you dare to bully my younger generation, you are really brave. She refined the divine vision she had acquired from Yuan, and she could see everything that happened outside. No, 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 Master, forgive me. I have no choice but to do it. Shang Yuan was frightened. He never expected that the master would appear. He thought that the master was probably no longer alive, so he was able to dominate and prosper in the Tiandao sect. Otherwise, even if he had 500 courage, he wouldn't dare. Mingzhu snorted coldly, what a last resort. If my obedient waiter hadn't let me out, would I have forced her today? Yuan he, that bastard, even if waiter didn't punish him, I would have pinched him to death, right? I am being disrespected by my descendants because I think my life is too long. And you, how do you teach your disciples? Yes, yes, master does whatever he wants. Disciple has no objection. I asked the sect master to let him out before just to educate him. Disciple doesn't want Tiandao sect to lose a genius disciple. Shangyuan Gongcha, he said respectfully, looking exactly like a grandson, without the condescending attitude before. Snort. Yuan snorted coldly in her heart. She looked at how Mingzu treated this piece of shit. I just didn't expect that Shang Yuan was Mingzu's apprentice. No wonder some people regard Shang Yuan as their ancestor. Fart, you don't know what I am doing. Mingzu patriarch swore directly, that can be considered a genius. There is no one in the god realm. This kind of garbage is stuffed into my Tiandao section. Genius, that kind of thing can be considered a genius. What is that girl? Evildoer. She glanced at Yuan and realized that this girl was truly a monster. In less than 200,000 years, we have already reached the realm of true gods, and some people are still gods. There are still many, many, many people in the immortal world who are still too early to ascend at this age. Master, no, no, Shang Yuan's sweat dropped and his tongue was tied as he spoke. Ming Qi and Yuan looked at each other and almost laughed. Relieve anger. Mingzu looked at Shang Yuan like this and felt annoyed. He was so submissive and not calm at all. Shang Yuan, master, you are the master, how can your disciple be so calm? Mingzu sat down and said quietly, you have been living a very leisurely life these years. Then go to the battlefield outside the territory and let Shangqing come back to take charge. Mingzu already knows what happened on the battlefield outside the territory. She originally had 5 major disciples, but one of her disciples has died, and now there are only 4 major disciples left. Shang Yuan is her eldest disciple, guarding in the god realm, while the other 3 are guarding on the battlefield outside the realm. Shang Yuan is a person who can't carry things clearly, so let Shang Qing come back. Its master Shang Yuan didn't even dare to fart and returned respectfully. By the way, before we leave, the curse of the Suzaku clan must be resolved. Yuan took the opportunity to say. Yes, respect the sect master's divine metaphor. Shang Yuan learned well and changed his attitude towards Yuan 180 degrees, showing great respect. In the future, we should do less things like annihilating entire clans. People from the Tiandao sect don't do such immoral things, as well as the 10,000 Buddhist temple. Of course, you won't be able to control these things in the future, but I still have to make it clear to you. Don't be confused like this when you are outside the country in the future. The pearl was also struck. Yes, master, my disciple understands. Shang Yuan was sweating in his heart. Fortunately, master did not punish him severely and only sent him to the outside world. With the master away, the people of Tiandao sect are indeed acting a bit erratically. Fortunately, most of the disciples have gone outside the region, otherwise. You know what the heck, you have all forgotten the purpose of my establishment of the Tiandao sect. During my absence, the entire Tiandao sect was in a state of chaos, with only a few people, and they were doing all sorts of messy things. During those years in the space, whenever she had nothing to do, she would pull Ming Qi to tell her what happened in Tiandao sect in these years. It's okay if she doesn't listen, but it really her off. Her purpose in founding the Tiandao sect was to uphold justice for heaven, act chivalrously and fight injustices for those in the god realm. She never expected that people from the Tiandao sect would bully the weak and destroy the entire clan. He really stepped on her face on the ground and rubbed it hard. These dogs, I really want to slap them to death. Shang Yuan was sweating profusely. He knew that his master was angry. When master gets angry, just take it as it is and never speak out to argue, otherwise the punishment will be more serious. Ming Qi and Yuan were watching the show, but it was a pity that only Shang Yuan was scolded here. Go and break the spell. When Mingzu was almost out of breath, she waved her hand towards Shang Yuan. Shang Yuan hurriedly flew out of the palace as if he was amnesty. Ancestor, it's better for you to take action. Yuan cast an admiring look at Mingzu and slapped her in the face. Young master, I'm so angry when I see Tiandao sect like this. Mingzu rolled her eyes at her. Then, you are back, is this the sect leader or you? You have a beautiful idea. I am going to go outside the territory, and the Tiandao sect will protect me. It's so fast, ancestor, your cultivation level has not recovered yet. Yuan put away her confused look and asked very worriedly. Mingzu waved her hand, don't worry, if you stay here, I won't be in the mood to practice. She was very anxious, but the more anxious she became, the more she couldn't calm down to practice, so she planned to go to the outside world first. Yuan nodded. She could understand Mingzu's mood. Just like when Mujukan had an accident, she had no intention of practicing. She just wanted to find the Suzaku ancestor and avenge Mujukan. Not to mention Mingzu's son and daughter-in-law, those three are the people who are dear to her heart. End of this chapter.